Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Pam Wycliffe. I'm with the League of Women Voters, and I, along with Melanie, up there on my upper left corner, and Kathy Platt up there on my right on my computer, are the committee that put together these days, these lunch with the leagues, and today will be an exciting day, I think. Before we start, I want to say what folks often know. We never support or oppose a political party or a candidate. What we do is we present unbiased information about elections, voting process, and issues. And then we are nonpartisan, but after study, we use our positions to advocate for or against particular policies. Particular policies on the public interest. So because of that, comments and opinions of people who speak aren't necessarily those of the league. We'll be here from now until 1, and our format has been agreed to with Lainey that she will speak for about a half hour, and then we'll have a half hour for questions and answers. Please mute yourselves during the talk. And with comment, we would like to put your comments into the chat, and then I'll read them to Lainey and she can then answer the questions. And I don't know how your Zoom looks like, but I had to go to the more to get to the chat because they've added a whole bunch of silly things like AI companion and stuff like that down below. If you are interested in more information about the League of Women Voters and their positions, you can go to www.leagueofwomenvote.lwvsouthbend.org. And if you go there, you'll find a lot of information about what we do, but also information about the Indiana League of Women Voters, of which we're a part, and also of the National League of Women Voters, and how to get to those different websites, because there's so much information out there, particularly for the national. Okay, we do have a little bit of news that I want to mention, and that is the annual business meeting will be coming up on June 13th at 6 o'clock at Papa Vino's in Mishawaka. And this Sunday, you'll receive an email from Jerry Pawlowski with the announcement, a link to the RSVP, and important documents pertaining to the meeting. Registration is required, and we hope you'll join us for the meeting. And it's always a fun meeting. We always have a good time, and the food is always good. So, you know, who can beat that? Okay, that taken care of. Our speaker today, we are having and happy to have Lainey Holland Adams, who is the Director of Planning and Programs at Cultivate Food Rescue. She has been with Cultivate for almost 4 years and supports the organization through development strategy, special events, grant writing, and program management. Lainey has a master's degree in nonprofit administration from the University of Notre Dame and is committed to utilizing her skills and passion toward the betterment of her community. Her topic today is about Cultivate Food Rescue. As the only food rescue organization in this region, it's rapidly growing and expanding its physical presence in northern Indiana. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm going to let Lainey say all the other stuff. Lainey, it's your program now.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Pam, and thanks to all of you for having me today. We always love sharing our story with members of the community, especially as we're expanding, which you guys will hear more about in my conversation. But before I start, just, I guess, a show of hands, either if you're on your screen or just with the little reaction. How many of you have heard of Cultivate or been a volunteer, engaged in any way? Yeah, so quite a few of you. That's awesome. Great. Let me get my PowerPoint pulled up. All right. So before I get started, just a little bit of history on Cultivate. So we have been around as an organization since 2016. We actually started as a culinary training program, though. We are working with the Crossing and Goodwill. Uh-oh, we're on a timer. And we were training students in culinary skills, placing them with partners in the area. But then in 2017, we went down to an organization in Indianapolis called Second Helpings to learn about their culinary program, look at a curriculum with them. And it just happened to be the day after the Indianapolis 500, and they were rescuing food from that event. And so it was just a well-oiled machine with staff and volunteers rescuing all this food and repurposing it for community organizations. And our two co-founders thought it was amazing. They were like, hey, we have Notre Dame in our backyard. We have so many restaurants and catering companies. We could do something like this in South Bend region. So that's kind of where the idea came from. So in 2017, that summer is when we first started rescuing food. So in just 7 short years, we have grown very rapidly. And even in my time there since 2020, our staff has grown over 3 times. The amount of food we're rescuing has grown almost 10 times. And we are on a trajectory to continue that growth even into the next 10 years. So our mission at Cultivate, let me go back here first, actually. So our vision statement, you can see here at the bottom, no neighbor hungry, no food wasted. That's obviously a big statement. That's a bold statement. But we know that there's more than enough food in this community to feed everyone who's hungry. And so Cultivate is really trying to be the logistics between those two challenges in our community. And our mission statement is that through strategic partnerships, and that's really key for us, we'll talk about a little more of those partnerships. Cultivate will be a leader in perishable food rescue, procurement, redistribution, and education in order to meet the nutritional needs of communities. So I know quite a few of you are probably familiar with food rescue since a lot of you are familiar with Cultivate, but if you're not, here's just a graph that kind of is a pretty clear example of what food rescue is and how Cultivate is involved in that ecosystem. So up here at the top, you can see these are all of our food donor partners. So that could be restaurants, catering companies, universities like Notre Dame, 4-H, we go and buy animals every year, farmers with produce and other products. And all of these partners have excess food. Whether or not a food organization is partnering with us yet or not, they likely have excess food. And oftentimes, if there's not a Cultivate, that's just going into the trash. And so, oh, sorry, Pam, did you have something? Oh, you're muted.
Can you make it just that?
Yeah, sorry, I
Your
have.
picture, so we can read the words. If down below,
Yeah.
there's a little thingy you can do, and if you click on it, it'll make that picture just the only one.
Yeah, I'm just trying. I had it was on a timer for some reason, so I got to make sure
Oh, there you
we're not
go.
on there.
That's
But
beautiful. Now we can read it better.
alrighty,
That's all. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
nope, you're good. So then Cultivate right here in the middle, this purple hub, that's where we step in really as the logistics between all of this excess food and then partners in the community who are distributing that to food insecure neighbors. So we have trucks that are on the road every day. I'm sure many of you have seen those on the road with our logo. They're picking up food from all of these partners of ours and distributing it to other partners. So all that food comes back to our warehouse. We have chefs on staff, we have volunteers, all of whom are repackaging and repurposing this food so that we can distribute it. And then all of our meal partners here at the bottom, that can be food pantries, soup kitchens, Veterans Affairs, Boys and Girls Club, Ronald McDonald House, low-income housing facilities, and schools as well. So all of those partners are receiving our food, whether that's in the form of meals or bulk food, which I'll give more details about later. And then redistributing it to students or clients of theirs that are coming in to get those resources. So the reason that Cultivate's mission is so crucial is that 40% of the food supply in our country becomes waste. So that can be at the factory level, at the restaurant level, even in our personal homes. And that's the largest factor of waste in our country. But yet, just in our 3-county area, we serve St. Joseph, Elkhart, and Marshall counties. There's 61,000 people who are living in poverty and likely don't have enough food to make it through the month. And also almost 44,000 students who are on free and reduced lunch in those counties. And they get breakfast and lunch every day at school, but then over the weekend, there's potentially 68 hours where they would not have the nutritional resources that they need. And so again, it's really just a logistics challenge. There's more than enough supply in our country. We overproduce food, but we haven't figured out how to reduce that waste and to reallocate that to the people community who really need it. And 76% of that food that's wasted is actually perishable items. So that's your fruits, your vegetables, dairy, bread, all the items that are typically also more nutritious. And our pantry system, the way it exists, a lot of the food that goes out to the vulnerable families in our communities is shelf-stable items. So canned items with high sodium, boxes of cereal or snacks, soups. And so there's a lot of perishable food items that could be repurposed, but it also has a lower shelf life. So it has to be turned pretty quickly. And so Cultivate has invested in cold storage so that we can really focus on the perishable food. This is a picture actually under the stadium at Notre Dame. So Notre Dame has been one of our partners from the beginning. And we go to every football game. And at the end of the third quarter, we bring our trucks to the stadium, and our staff goes underneath the stadium with volunteers and rescues all the food that's prepared up in the suites, and sometimes even at the concession stands. But Century Center, the Four Winds Casino, Navarre, Matterhorn, a lot of these places in the area will donate their food that's already prepared but unserved. You can kind of see in those pans right there. So we're not going to like a Golden Corral and picking up their leftovers, but anything that stays in an oven, in a kitchen that's like certified with the health department, we can pick up, and that can go directly in our meals to then be distributed. And then in addition to that, we also rescue a lot of bulk food. So this comes from grocery stores. Trader Joe's has been a great partner of ours. Whole Foods and Fresh Time are listed here as well. We started working with a lot of restaurants you may be familiar with too: Chipotle, Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, Pizza Hut. A lot of these even national chains will repurpose their food locally. So we get a lot of great products. You can see a lot of fruits and vegetables in these pictures that are really key resources for our pantry partners. And this is a testimonial from the old manager at Trader Joe's, but he just talks about how it's a source of pride for their staff. They know they're reducing waste, helping to save the environment, and also feeding people in the community at the same time. So it's a really easy pitch to food donors, and also financial partners as well. There's two challenges that we're addressing at the same time, and it really just makes sense. So volunteers, I know before everybody got on, we were already talking a little bit about opportunities to volunteer. We had, and this will be on another slide, but we had over 7,000 volunteers in 2023. It's a very, very high number. We're super thankful as an organization to really never run out of volunteer labor. So our volunteers, they prep in the kitchen. So there's a whole process to which the food comes in and goes back out at Cultivate. But volunteers are really involved in every step of the way. They drive trucks, they help with our logistics team, they prep meals in the kitchen. And then our most popular volunteer shift would be the packaging of meals. So you can see a great example here of these meals that are then going out to students in the community who are on free and reduced lunch to take home over the weekend. But these meals contain a protein, a starch, a vegetable. Sometimes we do breakfast meals as well. In our volunteer groups, there's normally about 15 to 20 volunteers in each group. And in just 2 hours, they can pack over 1,000 meals. We have seen our volunteers are super competitive. They're really invested in what Cultivate's doing. And so I think our record's like 3,100 meals in 2 hours, which is just insane. But we have a little competition that we do in March and they get very competitive. So our volunteers will process these meals and then afterwards they will get bagged. This picture in the center, this was during COVID when people were still wearing masks, but they will bag up 6 meals, a variety of different meals, so that those are ready to distribute directly to our school partners. We do have volunteers 7 days a week. So for some people, it's hard maybe during the work week to get in and volunteer. So we have a morning and an evening shift. So 9 to 11 in the morning and 6 to 8 p.m. And then we do have Saturday shifts as well and Sunday as needed. So our goal right now is to package at least 7,500 meals a week. Lately, we've been doing over 8,000, I think. We've had a lot of volunteers. And in 2023, our volunteers packaged almost 350,000 meals, which is just an awesome number when you think about the fact that every single one of those meals got into the hands of a child who may not have had food for over the weekend. And like I mentioned earlier, over 7,000 volunteers work with Cultivate annually. A lot of those are packaging the meals, but really they're helping in every aspect of the organization. So I mentioned a little bit about where some of the food goes, but I'll get into a little bit more of the details. So our backpack program, this is really our flagship program. We started this in 2019 with Madison Elementary in South Bend, and then went over to Elkhart Community Schools. But this started with just 100 students, and with all this excess food, we were noticing that a lot of programs that send food home with students over the weekend is granola bars and cereals and gummies and other snacks, and kids love that, and that's for sure needed. But that we're really just concerned about the nutritional quality of food that the most vulnerable students in our community were getting over the weekend. In Madison Elementary, over 90% of the students are on free and reduced lunch. And so that was kind of why we wanted to start there. It's one of the more impoverished schools in the community. And so we knew that it would be a good target for our pilot program. And they do about 100 students every week. In all of our schools, we're in 13 school districts, and we're serving a little over 1,300 students each weekend. But these students get lunch and breakfast every day at school. But between lunch on Friday and breakfast on Monday, there's 68 hours where the students may go without any meal. And one of the principals actually at Madison Elementary told us that she never lets students run in the hallway except for on Monday mornings, because some of these kids come to school from the weekend and they are so hungry because they haven't eaten all weekend that they're racing to the cafeteria to get breakfast. And that is just a heartbreaking story, and really just propelled us to grow this program and make sure that we could serve as many students as possible, so that was no longer an issue. So not only is there a nutritional aspect to this program, but if you haven't eaten all weekend, it's really hard to even show up to school on Monday. But if you're there, it's hard to focus. It's hard to behave well and get along with your classmates. So there's really an educational and developmental component as well that we've started to do some more research on, just the impacts of how that has improved those outcomes for students. We work directly with social workers at the schools. They identify the students who are most vulnerable in their schools, and they tell us how many meals they need each weekend. So we don't have the information for the students. We try to keep it as private as possible. But our trucks will deliver directly to the schools so that the social workers don't have to worry about picking those up. And then all they have to do is hand them out to the students at the end of the day, Friday. These are all of our school partners. So like I mentioned, St. Joseph, Elkhart, and Marshall counties we're serving. And we do have a waiting list of probably about 10 schools. And we're hoping over the next 2 years, we'll be able to incorporate all of those partners into the program as well. And that's really just limited resources for us, whether that's financial or food resources, or just the capacity to produce as many meals as are needed in the community. So we're excited to keep growing that program. We do serve over the summer as well. We'll serve at some community sites so that it's easily accessible for all students, no matter where they go to school. And then we also work with Elkhart, Goshen, and South Bend. They're like summer school programs so that we can provide meals to students who are in summer school. Just from some of our research and surveys, these are some testimonials from families just about the impact of the program, the extra support that that provides when they're trying to stretch their grocery money at the end of the month and provide for their kiddos. So the other thing about our backpack meals is that they're all microwavable. So if students are home over the weekend and a parent's working or they don't have the adult supervision, they can warm those up in the microwave on their own and don't really have to worry about using a stove or an oven or anything that could be potentially dangerous. And then in addition to our backpack program, in really the height of the pandemic in 2020, we started what is now called our Cultivate Cares Food Network. But in addition to the rescued food, already prepared in pans, we started to get a lot of bulk food, like pallets full and truckloads full of food. And we could only cook so much to put in our meals with one chef. And so we started to call on partners in the community who we knew were serving food, whether that's through a pantry or soup kitchen or other methods, and just saying, hey, we have a truckload of bread or blueberries or cheese. How much do you want? What was originally just like an email text chain got to be a pretty large group of people who we noticed, again, the need just for more perishable, nutritious resources. And so we have now developed an online web portal where we put our inventory online every single day. We're always bringing in new food, so we never know exactly what we'll have. But all of that is online, and then our partners have their own login, and they have the opportunity to look through that inventory list and select what they want, add it to their cart, and then they can choose to either pick it up or we can deliver it to them if it's a load over a certain size. So we do have 2 trucks, but we're limited in how many partners we can deliver to directly. So a lot of them do come and pick up. But we currently are serving over 140 area partners. So a lot of those are pantries, but there's other agencies as well who are serving our vulnerable students and families in the community. So this is just a small segment of those partners, but you can kind of see a little bit of the variety there. Food banks, food pantries, Oak Lawn is a mental health facility, even the St. Joe County Public Library. So we actually have our frozen meals at the library. They recently purchased a freezer and a microwave so that people can come right into the library and heat themselves up a meal. So that's been a great partnership. And this is one of our pantry partners. They're just talking about the ability for them to serve almost double the number of clients from one year to the next without increasing their budget for food. So a lot of our partners have very limited budgets, and they're going to Aldi and Meijer and Kroger and every place they can to get the best deals. And so that's not only time consuming, but a lot of these pantries are run by maybe one staff member or just volunteers. And so we've been able to provide all of the food to our partners at absolutely no cost to them, so that they can just focus on serving more people and not have to worry about the financial stresses of increasing the number of people they're serving. So since the pandemic, that program has ramped up significantly. I don't know if we've ever reached out to somebody to add them to the program. We always have people calling us to get added. So at times there's a waiting list as well for this program, but we're making strides to really grow this program and our backpack program as well with our physical space that we're adding on to. So like I mentioned, we don't sell any of our food. Everything is given to partners at absolutely no cost to them. And as a nonprofit, we're fully supported by donations from individuals, companies, and also grant sources. We're serving 1,300 students. That's in about 62 individual school locations and then 140 agencies in our Cultivate Food Network. We have rescued, I think now we're really close to 7 million pounds of food. The first year ever, we rescued 70,000 pounds of food, and this year we're on track to rescue 4 million. And those numbers are just crazy. Even being with the organization for 4 years, it's still mind-boggling to me how we've grown to that size. But clearly there's a need, and so we just keep trying to step up to meet that demand. And in 2023, through our partners who report some of their numbers to us, we learned that we were able to serve over 22,000 families through our network of partnerships in the 3-county area. And we have 18 full-time staff members, but with all the volunteers that we had in the last year, it's equivalent to about 14 FTEs as well. So a lot of this we know is not possible without the work of our volunteers. And then the other aspect of Cultivate's mission really is that sustainability pillar. So by diverting this food from the landfill where it would sit and produce harmful gases, we've been able to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, equivalent to taking over 2,500 cars off the road for an entire year. So the sustainability world is sometimes hard to understand the numbers and all the abbreviations, but I think that equivalent ratio there just shows the drastic impact that this makes, not only on feeding people, but just improving our environment. So then the future, we're wrapping up here. I know we're about 12:30. If you guys have driven past our facility, you will notice that this is a rendering, but it pretty much looks exactly like this now. So this is a 22,000 square foot freezer. There's a little tiny office space up here, but the rest of it is entirely cold storage. Like I mentioned, the demand for our product is just growing, and we're really trying to focus on more of the perishable resources, but with that is the need for cold storage. And we just kept adding on small freezers to our facility, and we were converting trailers and trucks into freezers, and we decided to stop putting a Band-Aid on the problem and just go big. And so this has been an almost 2-year project, and we've raised almost $10 million for this facility and a few other additions. But this will allow us to take 2 full-size semi truckloads at a time. Our current facility can't even take a semi because of the way we're situated on the land. So they can't come up to our dock. But we're actually already in the process of moving all of our cold food over to this facility so that we can just increase the number of partners that we're serving, increase our efficiency, and also down the road, continue to improve the quality of food and really focus on that perishable aspect of these resources. So our partners are excited about this facility. We're hoping that any of our partners can also use this space if they need to store cold food, because we won't fill it up immediately. This building will allow us to rescue up to 20 million pounds of food in a year. So that obviously takes a lot of staff and resources and money. So we'll do that over the next 5 to 10 years. So we'll have space for other partners to store some of their food. But you can kind of see this was in the middle of construction in the fall, it looks like, the pretty trees. And it's gone up really quickly. We broke ground on it early July. So in less than a year, we'll actually have our official grand opening ceremony in June. And then on top of this facility, we will be paving our parking lot for volunteers so that we can add additional spaces for those volunteers. We'll be adding on office space to our current facility, which I'm very excited about. I'm at home right now talking to you guys because it's so loud at our office. We're just in one big warehouse. So we will be very excited to have offices and be able to take Zoom calls in peace. And then finally, in the fall, we will open a second volunteer facility in Elkhart County, right off of County Road 17. So we're going from 1 to 3 buildings in 1 year. But this building is really focused on the growth for our Cultivate Food Network. And then that second volunteer facility is really focused on the backpack program, because we'll be able to double our production of meals and bring in double the amount of volunteers. we often have a waiting list for volunteers of like 2 to 3 months. So we're hoping with another facility, we'll be able to reduce that time. And also for volunteers who are located closer to Elkhart, it'll be a little more convenient. So we are nearing the completion of that project. It's just over $10 million. I think we're at like 9.4. So we will be so excited to finish that. It's been a long road, but we're super excited about what that means for us for the future. Before we get to questions, and I can leave the screen up too, but if you guys are interested in getting involved, there's our volunteer email. You can also check out our website under the Get Involved tab. There it says volunteer with Cultivate, and you can check out all of the shifts that are available, the time. But again, with a larger group, there might be a wait time, so sometimes it's just easier to contact our volunteer coordinator. She can get you guys plugged in. We are on social media. I know you guys mentioned you have a Facebook for the league. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter or X. And then just our website, cultivatefoodrescue.com. We just did a revamp of the website a few months ago. So there's a lot of great information on there about programs, our partners, and just different ways you can get involved. And then finally, if anyone's interested in being a donor to Cultivate, whether that's a one-time gift or a monthly gift, or even if you have a company or that you know that likes to be involved in charitable giving, you can do that on our website, or you can also contact me or this email that's listed for Todd, and we'd be happy to get you guys plugged in any way. So I can leave this up so you guys can look at that information a little more, and then I'm happy to answer questions. I know I threw a lot of information at you guys.
Oh, Lane, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start down the list.
Yes.
And you might have answered some of them that came up. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Let me go down. Beth North, I'm amazed at the growth of Cultivate from its inception till now. Thank you. There's a large, if there's a large event, and I think you might have answered this, but I know that my daughter goes to a church that has large events or funerals or weddings or whatever's. They give her the food that's left over, then she can donate it to places. And Our Ladies of the Road, she donates it to them sometimes. But would you take it as well?
Yep. Yeah. As long as we have a few stipulations. It has to be like a licensed kitchen with the health department, and then it can't be something that's been on like a line where people could have had access to it. But anything that stays back in the kitchen, we can definitely take. And we'll take, small quantities, like 5 pounds of food up to truckloads. So it's a big variety of everything we can take. And then
if it hadn't left the kitchen.
Yep. And then the only thing we can take from like a personal home, we can take things from people's gardens. So that would be the other option. And somebody mentioned eggs. We have a few people that donate eggs as well. Okay.
How much food of the healthier kinds, like fruits and vegetables, do you rescue and redistribute from grocery chains in the 3 counties?
Yeah, so you saw the pictures from like Trader Joe's. We do a little bit of that with those type of grocery stores. We really don't work with like Meijer, Kroger, or Martin's yet. Part of that is due to just our limited space before we get into the new building. But they also have just some regulations and red tape around donating. So it's been a little difficult to get in there. But a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we end up getting is from like local farmers or gleaners. Society of St. Andrews is a gleaners group in the area. We work with them a lot in the summer. And then there's like a group of farmers in Southwest Michigan that we started working with last year. So we get a lot of produce from them.
Wow. Okay. What are the plans to transition to environmentally friendly, compostable plastic containers? A la Unity Garden packaging that they use farmer market sales.
Yeah, we get this question a lot. So I would say currently our containers are as like recyclable as they can be, considering the fact that they get frozen, moved around in trucks, and then reheated in the microwave. they also have to be pretty durable. So we do the same thing with like the bags that we put the meals in. We've looked at options and try to make them as environmentally friendly as we can while also considering just all of the transitions that these meals have to go through.
Okay. Do the weekend meals include just the child that was selected from the school, or can it be or does it include the rest of the family members? I mean, for kids that have siblings that may be 2 or 3 years old.
Yeah. So currently it's only students who are in the school. So if there's a family with multiple kids in school, multiple of the kids can be in the program. But we intentionally make our meals a little big. So it's more than enough food for like a third grade student so that they can then share it at home. And what we hear too from a lot of the families is that they'll kind of like take them every week and store them until maybe like the end of the month when they're running out of like their food stamps or for other resources. And then at that point, they've kind of stored enough so that they can share with the whole family. But we do work with the schools directly, so it has to be a student in school.
Okay. Comment. It breaks my heart to know there's so much hunger in the world that we produce food required to feed the world, but lack the political will and commitment to solve the logistical and political hurdles of food cultivation, recovery, and distribution. I am so grateful to Cultivate for tackling this issue here at home. Now, her question, do the school systems that you're working with provide any financial support to Cultivate to help you meet these students' needs?
Yeah, we haven't gotten financial support directly from the schools. We've partnered with a few like grant sources or companies with a specific school where they kind of fund the backpacks. So for example, in Goshen schools, we've been partnering with Goshen Health. They have a grant where they refund us for all of the meals that go to Goshen schools. And then in Argus, there's a local company who donates every year to kind of cover the costs of the meals going to their students. So it doesn't come directly from the school system, but in a lot of the communities, there's like corporate and grant support around the backpacks that are going to their students.
Are you already coordinating with the Boys and Girls Club of Elkhart County, St. Joe County, and their expanded coverage counties?
Yeah, we work really closely, especially with Elkhart County, actually. They do more of the bulk food because they like prepare snacks and different meals for their students. And we work with St. Joseph County as well. We haven't done a ton of like frozen meals with the Boys and Girls Club just because a lot of their students are already coming from schools where they receive the meals. But especially over the summer, we'll work a little more with the Boys and Girls Clubs since the students aren't in school.
And where are you located for pickup of food?
Yeah, we're on Prairie Avenue. Our address is 1403 Prairie Avenue. You can find it on our website too. So that's where people come directly for pickup. So once we're fully operable in the new building, that's just 1503 Prairie Avenue. But people will come to that facility instead of our current one.
Is St. Michael's and All Angels service on Saturday, SOS, third Saturday of the month, a current or future pantry partner? And who would be the person out of that group to lead to call? Who would that person call?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head the whole list, but if you check on our website, Bob Herbert, he's our director of operations, and he kind of runs the Cultivate Cares Food Network. So they could contact him. But really, if you call in our general number, they can get directed to the right place.
Okay. Moving on. How do you ensure that the food hasn't spoiled?
Yeah, we have a really amazing operations staff and kitchen staff as well. They all take Serve Safe certification classes and have been in the industry for a long time. So we do a really good job with quality control of like when food comes in, checking that food, making sure it's good. And we also only work with partners who, like I mentioned, are certified with the health department. And also they have to keep track of like the date that it was first cooked, because we can only keep things for 7 days after the fire date. And then they also have to keep track of the cooling temperature. So how it was cooled down. So we know that that has all been done properly. So we haven't really had any issues around that. There's been some food donors who we've maybe had to go back and talk to and say, hey, you've been giving us stuff that we've had to throw away, because we try to reduce our waste even on our end, making sure that we're not bringing in anything that's bad. But we also more recently have started to like sort through food at an even smaller level. Like, you know, if you get a package of strawberries and maybe there's one that's like kind of bad or starting to get moldy, that doesn't mean you have to throw out the whole package. You just need to get rid of that one. And like if it touched any other ones. So our team has been doing a little bit of that so that we can salvage everything possible.
Wonderful. By any measure, you've been super successful. What have been your stiffest challenges?
Definitely the one we're addressing right now has been the cold storage space. So we say that we have to grow our financial resources, our volunteers, our food donations, and our cold storage space at a relatively similar rate so that we can sustain our growth. And so we've been able to do that with everything except the cold storage. And so that's why we obviously are building this new facility. And then post that, I mean, I think really the challenge over this next year is just going to be sustaining that growth. And we could probably fill up this new facility like next month. There's definitely 20 million pounds of food that's going to waste that could be redirected, but we're going to have to take that slowly and, you know, figure out who the best partners are to work with in the meantime. So I would just say the rate of growth and just sustainability of that will be the biggest problem in the next year.
Okay, what a good problem to have. Comment, bravo, 1,300 students, 22,000 families, 6.5 million pounds of food, and 140 community partners is amazing. And the trajectory for increased productivity outreach is incredible. The benefit to individuals, the community, and the environment is tremendous. Thank you very much, said Elizabeth. Cynthia, thank you. What a wonderful realization of a needed concept. John, can you work with a federally funded, regulated organization like Meals on Wheels to supply food for their home delivery program?
Yeah, I don't know if I know the answer to that directly, but we have not worked with any organizations like that for our meals. We've worked with Real Services with some like bulk food, but we, because they get funding for their meals specifically, we just really haven't put our feet in that realm at all. Yeah, I guess I'm not sure exactly, but there are definitely a lot of federal programs to supply meals, and we've started to look into a little bit if we could get reimbursed for meals to the schools through some of the funding that schools get. So there's resources out there, but you know, there's a lot of red tape and hoops to jump through. And so sometimes you got to figure out if it's the right fit or if it's worth it to deal with all the reporting that is required.
Yeah. Also, if a group wanted to volunteer, how would they, whoops, it disappeared for me. How would they interact with you to arrange time, place, number of people available? And when do you need volunteers?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, the website is kind of the best place where we host our schedule, the times and dates that volunteers are needed. Really, we have volunteers every day of the week, so we can use people whenever. And if people prefer the kitchen or they want to drive a truck, there's other options other than just the meal packaging. But like I mentioned, there is often a waiting list right now. And so if the schedule is, you know, booked too far out, then our volunteer coordinator's information is on.
If if they want to do something beyond the food prep, do you have waiting lists for those areas too of volunteering?
Also on the screen here. Oh, sorry, I think it froze.
Did I freeze?
Yeah, I think mine did.
Oh, did you get my question?
No, I didn't. Is it just the last one in the chat?
No, I didn't write it down. I'm just interjecting. When, if somebody wanted to volunteer a group, do you have waiting lists also for truck drivers and to work in the kitchen and do things other than the prep work?
Most of the waiting list is for the food packaging. So that's where the groups are. Most of the other jobs are like individuals or maybe up to 3 or 5 people.
Okay. If the root cause is named, what is it? What does that mean, Beth?
The root cause of the need for all of this food that is being provided to these families who are in abject poverty, so much so that they can't feed their children.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can exactly speak to that, but we, especially post-pandemic, have seen the need rise. And a lot of that, there were so many programs during the pandemic. They were offering food to family boxes through the USDA. Pantries were open like additional hours. There were extra SNAP benefits. And so when those went away, a lot of these families have relied on a lot of that extra support. And so the pantry line started to increase the need for food in the schools, backpack program. All of that has really grown. And obviously also post-pandemic, just inflation, the price of groceries. And so even families who maybe had never, we heard a lot of our partners saying like there were families in line who had never been to a pantry before, but maybe they lost a job during the pandemic or just, money didn't stretch like it used to when the price of groceries just skyrocketed. And so sometimes it's just like, again, towards the end of the month, if their benefits don't stretch that long. Or sometimes it's really like a consistent thing where these families are relying on the pantries. But obviously there's a variety of reasons for why they're in all those different situations.
Thank you. It's good to know too that we have a Unity Gardens extension or satellite garden at our church.
Yeah.
And it's good to know that there's a place when we have an abundance of food that is fresh, that will perish if we don't find a place for it. It's good to know that we could bring it to you or arrange for pickup.
Yes, absolutely.
Laney, when is the one in Elkhart to open?
The plan is October. So we're kind of waiting to see, what happens with this current facility, the cold storage. But we would like to have our first volunteer groups in October.
Had a question. Okay. Does someone else have a question while I remember my other question? I can't see other people.
I will pipe in that what is amazing to me is that the person who started this is their CEO, and that he went from doing it on the side to doing it as his full-time job. And I think that's a laudable accomplishment. I think he's famous for saying, at least to me, just because you operate a nonprofit organization doesn't mean you don't need profit.
And Lainey, I know, I remember my question. Are you getting enough financial donations?
Yeah,
to cover the need that you have?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely always working to find new donations, and just, meet with donors and writing grants. So we have a team of people, I'm on that team as well, who's working always on development, fundraising strategies, all that kind of stuff. But we have had a lot of just very generous support from the community, whether that's individuals, churches, service clubs, companies, or foundations in the area.
Okay, very good. And Jerry put in a note as a pitch for the annual meeting. And how to register and how much it costs and where to go. So if you want to look at that for that. Does anyone else have a Cultivate question, a further Cultivate question? I don't see one. I guess you must have told us everything there was to know about Cultivate.
Okay, I
And you
just want to
did a-
say thank you.
You did a
didn't know
beautiful
anything
job.
about. I didn't know anything about Cultivate, and I'm just blown away by how much you do. And thank you very much for coming and talking to us.
Yeah,
I really
of course.
appreciate it. Yes.
Yeah, well, thank all of you. It was so great to meet you all virtually. And yeah, thanks for inviting me. I hope you guys will choose to get involved with Cultivate, whether that's volunteering or donating. But yeah, feel free, Pam, if you want to share my information, if anyone has follow-up questions or ever
Okay,
needs to and reach out about anything Cultivate related, I'd be happy to connect with anyone.
Lainey, thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you all. Have a great
You-
weekend.
Doing a
Thank you.
great thing for our community. Yes.
Thank you.
And
Bye
happy
all.
Mother's Day, everybody.
Yes. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye, all. Have a good
Goodbye.
one.
Bye. Bye.